Mr. Speaker, I'm an American man born in Chicago to parents who were born citizens of the United States. The ban on legal immigration from 7 countries does not impact me or my family directly, but as an American, I am speaking up today. I am an immigrant. The proposed roundup of millions of immigrants will not hit my house directly, but as an American, I'm standing up today to say I too am undocumented. I have not fled systematic persecution, but today, like a lot of Americans, I'm speaking out and saying clearly, I too am a refugee. Today, I'm an 81-year-old man originally from Iran who traveled to the United States with a heart problem, Mr. Speaker, a green card in my hand, and his American family, and he was detained at O'Hare Airport in Chicago. Today, I'm a Fulbright scholar who was put on a plane back to Iran because our government did not understand what the new president was doing, how they were doing it, or what people already traveling should do. Today, I'm a citizen of the United Kingdom, I'm English, with a green card, who was blocked entering at O'Hare with my U.S. citizen wife and my U.S. citizen child. That's who I am today. Today, I'm a student in the middle of my academic career at the University of Chicago who does not know whether she can come back to school and continue her education. Today, I'm one of more than 67,000 refugees already approved for travel and certified by both the United States and the UN in a painstaking process that took me years to complete, but I'm stranded overseas. Today, I am gay or Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Shia or Sunni, from a tribe or an ethnic group that is systematically targeted for persecution, or living in a country anywhere in the world, that's who I am, that cannot protect my basic safety, and the United States is closed to me. Today, I'm an immigrant who has a green card and has followed all the rules to the letter, but I cannot renew my green card or lawfully apply for citizenship here in the U.S. because I'm from one of 7 mostly Muslim countries on Trump's list, where incidentally there are no Trump hotels, buildings, or golf courses. But now the entire world knows that the President of the United States screwed up bigly last week and caused an international and domestic crisis, and that his staff are lying when they say it was a, quote, huge success. When the German chancellor has to lecture your president about the Geneva Convention, you have made one hell of a bad decision. When the Prime Minister of England is saying one day that the U.S. and Britain have a special relationship, but you're keeping her citizens, out of your country the very next day, when they are green card holders, your country has made a mistake. When Rudy Giuliani, of all people, makes it clear that the president requested a Muslim ban and they dressed up the policy to make it look better, but still carved out exceptions to Christians, you are probably acting in an unconstitutional manner. That is what not 1, but 2 federal judges thought. And there are significant enough constitutional issues raised by recent executive actions to stop the president's order from being implemented. And honestly, even at this hour, I'm not sure they're fully complying with the orders, or will reverse the action of government officers at airports who coerced, intimidated green card holders into signing away their rights and being deported. On Sunday, the glaring bald spot of the president's executive order was combed over by the Secretary of Homeland Security, who said keeping out travelers who already live in the U.S. and have green cards is not in the interest of the United States, to which the entire world said sarcastically, "You think?" Today, I am an American, I'm standing up. Today, I am one of the millions of Americans who went to airports, Trump hotels, or town squares, who are marching peacefully, praying privately, and preparing personally to act as advocates for immigrants and other families in our communities. Women, Jews, Gentiles, LGBT, and everyone of every color and shape. Today, they did not come for us, but we could not be quiet. We joined arms and worked together as Americans. We pledged to stand up for those who are being targeted so that we can protect each other and stem the next wave of targeted attacks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields.